Hey, y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and this is my Seattle Housing Market Watch for June 17th, 2025. If you've been following this channel for a while, you might notice that our backdrop looks a little bit different. I started filming these videos on my iPhone in my backyard. I think my wife was filming while our oldest was sleeping, and slowly evolved the process. I had somebody film at the office for me. I got my own camera. I borrowed a studio, and here we are trying to figure out what this looks like at home. So any feedback you have on the gear or the setup, I'd love it in the comments. And ultimately, we're here to talk about the Seattle housing market. And that's what we're going to continue to do on a weekly basis and a monthly basis. So today, we're going to be talking about the King and Snohomish County stats over the last week. We're looking at what's coming on and off the market, and we're also looking at the pending sales in King and Snohomish County to see what we can learn about what's happening currently in the Seattle housing market. Now, let's look at the new listings for the week. 868 new listings over the past week in King and Snohomish County, and we had 924 last week. So fewer new listings coming on the market this week. We saw contingent sales jump significantly as well. 36 contingent sales over the last week in King and Snohomish County, nearing a high from what I can remember even doing in these videos, 21 last week. And then a big number here, we've been following, what's coming on the market, what's coming off the market. 2 weeks ago, we had 926 pending sales, 839 pending sales over the past week. So we're seeing fewer listings. We're also seeing a little bit slower buyer activity. That's something we've been talking about on this channel for a while, and that is that we're seeing the inventory building. We're seeing more listings coming on, fewer coming off, and a net gain of inventory, which generally causes the housing market to slow down as we're heading into the summer. The sold listings, I'll touch on these here too, are also down week over week, 587 versus 647. At the end of the day, we're really seeing how's this all going to shape up at the end of the month. So I don't pay as much attention to that on a weekly basis, but the solds are also down. And a couple things that are affecting what's going on. We're in a higher inventory environment than we have been in previous years. We're starting to see the supply creeping up. In my last monthly market update, we're talking about 2.5% to 3% supply in King and Snohomish County throughout. The interest rates remain high, 6.95% last week, and Mortgage News Daily survey showed 6.91% for the most recent one. And so still hovering right around 7%. I can't count how many times I've said that this year already. All right, let's transition to talking about the pending sales stats. And we'll start with King County, and then we'll move over to Snohomish County. And as we're looking at King County over the last week, we saw that the median sales price was $985, so hovering right around $1 million. 2 weeks ago, it was $982,875. So really pretty much the same number we've seen over the past few weeks. We've been hovering right around $1 million for the median sales price in King County for a little while. If we look at the average pending to sales price ratio, we can see how the market's responding in real time. And we're seeing this week 98% of the asking price. So we're not seeing an average of over asking price. We were seeing that, but we've been seeing that trend below asking price more recently in King County. We look at the data from last month. Hey, everything's selling over asking price, but that's not the case right now. And we're seeing that 99% of the asking price was the previous week. So we're seeing that trend. We're just seeing fewer multiple offer scenarios, not too many fewer, but every little bit counts. And speaking of that, 29% of all listings a couple weeks ago had multiple offers, 27% this week in King County. And then we had the same amount of pending sales with escalation addendum. So 11% this week, 11% last week. Something that I'm also looking at are the contingencies, right? What contingencies are buyers including in their contract? 61% last week had financing addendums. Get this, 68% this week had financing addendums. And the inspection addendum, 37% a couple weeks back, 38% this week. So we're seeing more and more of those contingencies being added into contracts. Fewer multiple offer scenarios would be the big reason. Now, if we look at Snohomish County, we're going to see some similar things. We're seeing the average percent of the sales price be 99% in Snohomish County. That's the same as it was last week. And that median sales price was $807,500 in Snohomish County. It was just below $800,000 the previous week. Not big changes there, but pendings with multiple offers also down slightly, 23% last week, 24% a couple weeks back. The pendings with escalations, 9% had them 2 weeks ago. Only 6% of all the listings over the past week that sold in Snohomish County had multiple offers. So we're starting to see houses sit. We're seeing price reductions, things like that. Now, the pendings with financing addendums, 81% 2 weeks ago, 76% the past week. So actually fewer financing addendums were included in offers, but the amount of inspection addendums are up. So 40% 2 weeks ago, 43% last week. Now, this is a lot of data, right? It's what do I do with all of this information? And I would say, as we're looking at the numbers, that the market is slowing down. We're seeing fewer multiple offer scenarios. We're seeing more contingencies in contracts. And what that means for buyers is you are not competing as much as you were competing earlier in the year. And for sellers, it means that you have less of that market pressure to kind of boost your sales price and or even keep that asking price. And for a seller, your number one negotiation piece is the market pressures. The market's doing this. This is what I want. Pay the price. But as the market shifts, buyers have more options and they start to have the advantage and say, well, I'll just buy a different house, or I'll work with a different seller who's willing to negotiate with me a little bit. And when the market's really hot, everything's selling really fast. But when the market slows down, which it is doing right now, it's a lot harder to get those higher prices, and especially over asking price. Thanks so much for tuning in with me here today and for bearing with the new setup. We're still in process and we'll keep building it out and adjusting it here over the next few weeks. If you have questions about buying or selling real estate here in Seattle, I'd love to be a resource for you. And if you know somebody who could benefit from videos like this, please consider sharing the channel with them.